Hi guys, welcome to my channel. In this video, I will be covering data models topic in dbms. I will explain all these models in detail. Guys, I have uploaded complete dbms subject tutorials. I will provide link in description, you can watch from there. If you are watching this video for the first time, don't forget to like, share and subscribe to my channel. Let's get started. At first, you need to know what is data model. For example, I will go to builder in order to construct house. So that at first builder will draw model of the house, like where hall is located, where kitchen is located, how many rooms and so on. So once if I see that model, I can clearly understand that how my house will look after construction. In same way, before storing any data in database, at first we need to create structure of database. So data model is nothing but creating logical structure of database is known as data model. Data model gives us an idea that how the final system will look like after its complete implementation. For example, if you consider relational model, in relational model we will store data in the form of tables like in rows and columns. Before actual implementation, at first we need to model our data like table name, how many columns that you want to insert and so on, so that we can clearly understand how data will be stored after implementation. Data model gives us an idea that how the final system will look like after its complete implementation. Data model defines the data elements and the relationship between the data elements. For example, if you consider there is teacher and there is department. As we know, teacher works for department. So relationship between teacher and department is work for. This teacher and department are data elements. So data model defines the data elements and the relationship between the data elements. Here relationship between this teacher and department is work for. Data models are used to show us how data is stored, connected, accessed and updated in database management system. Here we use set of symbols and text to represent the information, so that the members of organization can communicate and understand it. Guys, in data models we use symbols and as well as text in order to represent data, so that members in organization can easily understand. If you consider this example, in this example I am using both rectangle and rhombus, and I am also using text, that is teacher, works for and department. So we will use both symbols and as well as text. Once if you see this model, you can easily understand. So once if you see this model, you can easily understand. Guys, we call it as ER model. Though there are many data models being used nowadays, but relational model is the most widely used model. Guys, there are so many data models available, but among all this model, relational model is best. Relational model is nothing but data which is stored in the form of tables. Guys, I will explain all these models in detail. At first, I will explain what is hierarchical model. Guys, this hierarchical model was first a dbms model. In this model, we will represent data in the form of trees. In this model, at first we will create root node and then we will keep on expanding this tree by adding child node to parent node. At first we will create root node, after that parent node, and we can add multiple children to parent node. Guys, this hierarchical model will represent real world relationships. Guys, this is simple example in order to represent relationship between shoes by using hierarchical model. Where the shoe is root node, shoes are classified into two categories. They are women's shoes and men's shoes. Women's shoe contains high heels and bellies, and similarly men's shoes contains sports shoes and sneakers. We call this shoe as root node and we call women's shoes and men's shoes as parent nodes, and whereas this high heels, bellies, sports shoe and sneakers are child nodes. Guys, these are various features of hierarchical model. First one is one-to-many relationship. In hierarchical model, we will represent data in tree-like structure, where there exists one-to-many relationship, like one parent can have multiple children. For example, if you consider men's shoes as parent node, these men's shoes can have multiple children like sports shoes and sneakers. These both are multiple children to this parent node. Next feature is parent-child relationship. Guys, in hierarchical model, there can be multiple children for single parent, but multiple parents for single children is not allowed. For example, if I write like this, it is not allowed because in hierarchical model, one children cannot have multiple parents. So there exists only one-to-many relationship. Third one is deletion problem. For example, if we delete one parent node, then child nodes are automatically deleted. And next feature is pointers. Guys, we call these lines as pointers. Pointers are nothing but they are links. They are used to connect parent with child. These are advantages of hierarchical model. Guys, actually in hierarchical model, we will represent data in tree-like structure. So it is very simple and also it is very easy to traverse. And next advantage is, if you make any change to parent node, then it is automatically reflected in child node. So it is easy to integrate data. And these are disadvantages in hierarchical model. First disadvantage is, this hierarchical model will not support complex data. It is suitable only for simple data. And next disadvantage is, single children cannot have multiple parents. That is why it will not support complex data. And third disadvantage is, if we delete parent node, then child node is automatically deleted. These are three disadvantages in hierarchical model. Next I will explain network model. This network model is extension to hierarchical model. In olden days before relational model, this network model is widely used. This network model is same as hierarchical model. Only difference is that in hierarchical model, single child cannot have multiple parents. But whereas in network model, single child can have multiple parents. Here is a simple example. This college is root node. This college contains CSE department and library. There are students in CSE department and there are students in library. So both nodes, CSE department and library, are pointing to students. Where this college is root node and the CSE department and library are parent nodes and the student is child node. Where these both parents are pointing to single child node. Where this is not possible in hierarchical model. Next I will explain features of network model. First feature is ability to merge more relationships. Whereas in hierarchical model, there is only one-to-many relationship. But whereas in network model, there can be one-to-one relationships and as well as many-to-many relationships. And next one is many paths. As there are more relationships, there can be more paths. So data access is fast and simple. And third feature is circular linked list. In network model, in order to perform various operations, we use circular linked list. Next I will explain advantages of network model. When compared to hierarchical model, in network model, we can access data very fast because there is more than one path in order to reach to particular node. So we can access data in many ways. There are multiple paths for particular node and there are multiple ways in order to access data. And next advantage is, if we make any changes to parent node, then it will affect on child node. Next I will explain disadvantages of network model. First disadvantage is, a single child node can contain multiple parents. Relationship is very complex. So in order to design network model, there is lot of knowledge required. So network model is complex. And if you want to perform any changes to data which is present in network model, it is very complex. If you want to perform any operations like updation, deletion, insertion of data in network model, then it is very complex. Next I will explain entity relationship model. Guys, shortly we call this entity relationship model as ER model. Entity relationship model or simply ER model is a high level data model diagram. Guys, this ER model is nothing but it is simply a data model diagram. In this model, we represent the real world problems in the pictorial form to make it easy for the stakeholders to understand. Guys, pictorial form is nothing but diagrammatic form. If we represent any problem in diagrammatic form, then employees working in the organization can easily understand. If any developer who want to develop any database, then simply by seeing ER diagram, he can understand. This ER model is simply a ER diagram. This ER model contains three components. They are entities, attributes and relationship. Entity is a real world thing. It can be a person or place or even a concept. For example, if you consider in school there can be teachers, students, course, building, department, so on. All these are considered as entities. Next one is attributes. Whatever the properties that this entities contains, we call these properties as attributes. For example, if you consider teacher is entity, this teacher entity may contain various attributes like teacher name, teacher salary, teacher age, teacher ID and so on. So we call all this as attributes. And third one is relationship. Relationship tells us that how two entities are related. For example, there is one entity, that entity is teacher and next entity is department. Now what is relationship between this teacher and department? As we know, teacher works for department, so there is works for relationship between teacher and department. Guys, I will give an example. For example, this is student table. Student table contains student name, student roll number and section. Now this table name student is considered as entity and we will represent entity in rectangle. So inside rectangle I written student. And similarly, student table contains three columns. They are student name, roll number and section. Now we call this column names as attributes and we need to represent attributes in ellipse. This is another example. For example, there are two entities. One entity is teacher and next entity is department. This teacher entity contains attributes like teacher name, teacher ID, mobile number, age and salary. And similarly, department entity contains attributes like department ID and department name. As you know, teacher works for department. So I am establishing work for relationship between teacher and department. And we need to represent relationship in dramas. This is simple ER model where we call this teacher name and department as entities and teacher name, teacher ID, mobile number, age, salary, department ID and department name. All these are attributes. and this works for is relationship. These are features of ER model. First feature is graphical representation for better understanding. We will represent ER model in diagrammatic format, which is easy to understand. So it can be used by the developers to communicate with the stakeholders. For example, one person came to me and he asked to design one database. Then if we show ER model, then he can easily understand. And next feature is ER diagram. ER diagram is used as a visual tool for representing the model. Before constructing house, builder will give us model. So by seeing that model, we can easily understand how our house will look like after construction. In same way, before designing database, once if we check ER model, then we can easily understand how our database will look like after implementation. And next feature is database design. This model helps the database designers to build the database and is widely used in database design. Mainly we will use this ER model in database design. Next I will explain advantages of ER model. First one is simple. This ER model is very easy to build. If we know relationship between attributes and entities, then we can easily build ER model. And next advantage is effective communication tool. We can communicate to any person by using ER model. That is nothing but if any person see ER model, by seeing that ER model, he can easily understand how database will look like after implementation. So database designers will widely use this ER model. And next advantage is easy conversion to any model. For example, this is student ER model, where the student is entity and the student name, roll number and section are attributes. Now we can easily convert this ER model into relation model. So we can easily convert ER model to any other models. This model maps well to the relation model and can be easily converted to relational model. I already said before, it is very easy to convert ER model to relation model by converting ER model to tables. And not only relational model, we can also convert ER model to any other models like network model, hierarchical model and so on. Next I will explain disadvantages of ER model. First one is no industry standard for notation. Guys, there is no guarantee that all employees working in industry can understand this ER model. For example, one person designed ER model, but another person may not understand this ER model. And next disadvantage is hidden information. Guys, this ER model is high level data diagram. High level data diagram is nothing but most of the information is hidden in ER model. These are disadvantages of ER model. Guys, this hierarchical model and network model are old data models. Nowadays we are not at all using these models. At present we are using relational model. So next I will explain what is relational model. Relational model is most widely used model. In this model, data is maintained in the form of two-dimensional table. All the information is stored in the form of rows and columns. The basic structure of relational model is tables. So the tables are also called as relations in relational model. Thus relational model is nothing but whatever the data that is stored in the form of tables, we call it as relational model. Tables are nothing but in rows and columns. Guys, we also call tables as relations because we will store only related information. For example, if you consider employee table, in employee table we will store only employee related data like employee name, employee ID and so on. Guys, this is simple example of student table. We also call this table as relation. The student table contains 3 columns. They are student name, roll number and section. We also call columns as fields. Both are same. The student table contains 2 rows. They are Sai, roll number 39 section A, Raju, roll number 49 section B. Guys, we also call rows as records or we also call it as tuples. All are same, don't get confused. Guys, there are 2 features of relational model. They are rows and columns. We also call rows as, similarly we also call columns as attributes or we also call columns as fields. Rows contains individual information like name Sai, roll number 39 section A. And these attributes are nothing but properties. For example, if you consider student table contains properties like student name, student roll number, student section, student age and so on. Attributes contains properties. Next I will explain advantages of relational model. First one is simple. When compared to network model and hierarchical model, this relational model is very simple. And next one is scalable. If you want to insert new column or if you want to insert new rows, then it is very easy. And next advantage is structural independency. Can make changes to database structure without changing the way to access the data. Guys, we can easily change structure of tables like we can insert new columns or we can insert new rows. Even if we insert new rows and new columns, it will not affect any data which is present in database. Still we can easily access our data. Next I will explain disadvantages of relational model. First disadvantage is hardware overheads. In database we will store a huge amount of data. So we need proper storage device and also we need powerful hardware like high-end processors. Next one is bad design. This relational model is very easy to design. People those who are using database, they don't even know how data is stored in database. They simply access data. For example, I am student. Just I will check my marks in my college database. But I don't know how the data is stored in database. So person who is designing this database must be focused. Or else in future if database grows, database will become slow. But these two are only minor disadvantages. When compared to disadvantages, advantages are more in relational model. If we implement relational model correctly, then there will not be any problem. Next I will explain object-oriented data model. The object-oriented data model in dbms is the data model where data is stored in the form of objects. Guys, in object-oriented data model, we will store data in the form of objects. I will give one example so that you can clearly understand what is this object-oriented data model. This model is used to represent real-world entities. For example, if you consider college management system, students, faculty, department, all these are considered as real-world entities. Thus, in object-oriented data model, we will store data and as well as data relationship in single entity, and we call that entity as object. In object-oriented data model, we can store pictures, audios, videos, and other type of data. Where we can't store this in relational model. In relational model also we can store audios and videos, but it is not recommended. So if you want to store audios or videos or pictures or any other data, then you can use object-oriented data model. Guys, this is simple example of object-oriented data model. Actually, the student and department are entities. But whereas in object-oriented data model, we call the student and department as objects. Each object contains both attributes and methods. Attributes are nothing but properties. Like student can contains name, roll number, phone number, permanent number, department number, and so on. We call it as attributes. Methods are nothing but operations. What are the operations that student can perform? So students will get marks, students will get subjects, so on. So all these are operations. So we will represent it as methods. Similarly, department can contain attributes like department number, department name, department staff, department strength, and so on. Normally we will find department information. So we will use getInfo method. So object can contains both attributes and methods. Here in object-oriented data model, data and as well as data relationship is stored in single entity known as object. Here department number is common for student and department. So we can establish relationship between student and department. That is nothing but student will register in particular department. Next I will explain features of object-oriented data model. First feature is objects. In object-oriented data model, data is represented as object. Just remember this. Object is nothing but it is instance of class. Like we will store student information in student class and department information in department class. Like that we will show different information in different classes. And each object contains attributes and methods. So each object has its own set of attributes and methods. And next feature is encapsulation. Here we will write implementation details. And next one is inheritance. Object-oriented data model supports inheritance, which allows class to inherit attributes and methods of their parent class. For example, let us consider the student is parent class. Now I want to create subclass like CSC students. Now I can create this class by inheriting attributes and methods which are present in parent class. I can simply copy these attributes and methods. Next feature is polymorphism. Poly mean many, morphism mean forms, that mean many forms. For example, there are different objects in different classes. Now we can adopt all those objects and we can represent all those objects in single class. Next I will explain advantages of object-oriented data model. First advantage is reusability. Object-oriented data model promotes code reusability through inheritance. Classes can be derived from existing classes, inheriting their attributes and methods. Inheritance is nothing but process of deriving child class from parent class. In order to create new class, we will adapt attributes and methods from parent class. Next advantage is modularity. For example, I want to design one complex system. So simply I can divide these complex systems into submodules. So it makes easy to maintain and update the system. And last advantage is flexibility. Guys, we can design various classes according to our requirement. Next I will explain disadvantages of object-oriented data model. Guys, it is very hard to design object-oriented data model and it is very complicated to use. And we need to spend lot of time and lot of money. So it is complex. And next one is performance. When compared to all other data models, object-oriented data model is slow. And next one is scalability. Scalability is nothing but capacity. For example, if we increase more objects in object-oriented data model, many problems will occur. Though there are many advantages, there are equal disadvantages in object-oriented data model. So based on your project, you need to choose object-oriented data model. Next I will explain object-relational model. The name itself says object-relational model. Object is nothing but object-oriented data model and relational is nothing but relation model. Object-oriented data model supports objects, classes, inheritance and so on. Similarly, in relational model, we will represent data in the form of tables. So by combining features of these two models, object-relational model was created. Guys, normally in order to create database, we need to use structured query language. But whereas in object-relational model, for example, if you consider Java, C++, Python, all these are object-oriented programming languages. By using this programming language itself, we can create database and we can manage database. We will represent data in the form of tables. Next, I will explain flat data model. In olden days when computer was first introduced, we used to store our data in flat files. Just inside file we will create one table and we will store data, and there is no use of this model. Guys, it is not a relational model, but simply we will create one table inside file and we will store data. And for example, if any person want any information, then he need to read this entire table. So this flat data model is very slow and inefficient. Contextual data model is nothing but combination of all models. Whereas in associative data model, we will divide data into two parts. They are items and links. Guys, this flat data model, associative data model and context data model are not important. So you can ignore this. And last one is semi-structured data model. This semi-structured data model is a data model used in dbms that allows for representation of data in a flexible, hierarchical and loosely structured manner. The name itself says semi-structured. We will not represent data in complete structured format. Instead, we will use semi-structured format. Unlike traditional relational data models, where data is organized in the form of tables with predefined columns and data types, semi-structured data models allows for the storage of data with varying and evolving schema. Guys, I will give one example so that you can clearly understand what is semi-structured model. For example, if you consider relational model, in relational model we will store data in the form of tables. For example, I want to store information of three different students. One student name is Sai, rule number 21. So I will create name column and as well as rule number column, and I will insert name Sai and rule number 21. Similarly, for another student, I want to insert name Ravi, section A. So name column is already present, so I can write Ravi, and section column is not present in my table. So again I need to create section column and I need to write section A. And similarly, there is another student. The student name is Raju. This time I want to insert age 20. So again I need to create age column. Here I will insert name Raju and age 20. But in relational data model, we need to create predefined columns. That is nothing but before inserting data, at first we need to create columns. If you want to show details of different individuals with different attribute names, then you can use semi-structured model. XML and JSON are examples of semi-structured model. For example, for one student, I want to store name Sai and section A. And for another student, I want to store name Ravi and rule number 21. So just I need to create student name Sai section A. Guys, in XML we will represent data in tags. Anything that is written in angle brackets is known as tag. So at first I open student tag. Inside student tag I written name tag. Inside name tag I written Sai. For every open tag there should be a closed tag. So I took a slash symbol. Similarly, I open section tag. I written A and I close the section tag and I close the student tag. Similarly, another student. So I open student tag. Inside student tag I written name Ravi and rule number 21. Similarly, I close this name tag, rule number tag and student tag. Another example of semi-structured model is JSON, where JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation. In this, we will represent data in the form of classes. So where name Sai section A, all are strings. So take quotations. And similarly, another student name Ravi, rule number 21, where 21 is integer. So there is no need of taking quotations. Just write 21. This is semi-structured model. These are features of semi-structured model. First feature is flexibility. Though there are various types of data, we can store data in semi-structured data model. For one person there is section, for one person there is rule number, and for one person there is age. Even though data is different, we can store data in semi-structured model. Next one is hierarchical structure. If you consider previous example, XML and JSON, we will store data in hierarchical format like at first student, inside name, section, so on. This is in hierarchical format. And third feature is loosely structured. Guys, we will not store data in completely structured format. Instead, we will store data in semi-structured format. So, which is easy to handle data. And next one is no fixed schema. Schema is nothing but structured representation of data is known as schema. Semi-structured data model does not require any predefined schema. Any predefined structure is not required. So, based on data, we can create structure. Next, I will explain advantages of semi-structured model. First advantage is flexibility. Based on data, we can change structures. Even though there is complex data, we can handle the data. So it is flexible. And next advantage is scalability. Semi-structured data model has ability to handle complex data sets. And third advantage is easy integration. As data is stored in semi-structured format, we can easily integrate data. Integrate is nothing but combining data is very easy. And last advantage is reduced development time. As data is not stored in structured format like tables, simply we will store data in semi-structured format. So it is very easy to develop semi-structured model. Guys, there are two disadvantages in semi-structured model. First disadvantage is query processing. As different type of data is stored in semi-structured model, it is very complex to write queries. And next disadvantage is storage space. It will occupy much space. Guys, in exam you may also get separate questions like explain hierarchical model, advantages, features of hierarchical model, and so on.